Today, you have watched as there were massive outbreaks of violence. And this has been going on now. We've watched it over and over again at Berkeley and on other college campuses across the country. And you know that we're going to stay on top of this all the way, and that is the reason why we have the amazing and wonderful Ryan Sorba, Young Conservatives of California, in here to talk about this. Trump supporters attacked again today at Berkeley. Why does this keep happening? Why are no adults adulting in this? Like, I get that these are kids, but where are the adults here?
Well, I don't think it's an adult or adolescent divide. I think it's a communist versus America divide. I mean, Berkeley is a communist hotbed. And if you look at the protests that occurred over the weekend, the groups that were out there hating Donald Trump, our president, were Antifa, a Marxist organization that tries to bill itself as a bunch of victims who are fighting against fascism. But Donald Trump is not a fascist, obviously, and they're attempting to define all conservatives as fascists, but really they're Marxist. And then the other group is the Black Bloc, a group from Europe that migrated to the United States. They hide under their black clothing.
Yep.
So that police can't identify one from the other, so that nobody gets in trouble, because they know they're going to be violent and they know they're going to destroy things, and they don't want to get in trouble. So this group is anarcho-communist. So they're communists too. So you've got two communist groups trying to invoke a giant protest and fight against American pro-Trump individuals. And do you know why they're doing this? They're trained to do this. The Marxist plan, from time immemorial, from when Karl Marx wrote the Communist Manifesto and they implemented their strategy in the Russian Empire and in Europe and all over the place, they want to demoralize the citizenry. They want to make you stupid. They don't want you to make money. They want to make you a pervert so you don't join a family, or if you do, you get a divorce. And they do this so you're unhappy. And why do Marxists want the average American to be unhappy? They want them to be unhappy because then you get to be an outcast. And they're trying to build a coalition of outcasts.
And because then they can control you.
Exactly. They want a coalition of victims, so these victims hate the government, hate their life, and they have reason to protest. Why do they want to protest? Because they want to shut society down.
I guess I have a problem believing that the vast majority of these people, for example, parading through Washington, D.C. with female genitalia hats on their heads that they bothered to knit, which was just the most awkward irony. I guess I just have problems believing that everyone understands politics to the degree that you do, right? And so what do they think they're doing? I guess that's...
They are what the Bolsheviks in their time called useful idiots.
Yes.
They don't know what they're doing. They're in a bubble. They're buying the Communist Party line, the politically correct Bolshevik Party line. The communists invented the phrase politically correct. It went from Trotsky to Mao Zedong, who murdered 60 million and 45 million people in Russia and China. And it came over here from German Marxists, Herbert Marcuse. And he and Theodor Adorno wrote The Authoritarian Personality and Repressive Tolerance, and they argued for oppressing the majority by a minority by way of political correctness. In other words, support the ideas and cause the American public to be accepting of Marxist concepts and to not accept concepts and categories that undergird freedom and capitalism. So now they want to protest so they can shut society down, and when society gets shut down, then disorder ensues, panic comes out, and a Marxist savior emerges with a new deal for the people, only under a communist form of government.
Right.
That's the way it happens. And that's what they're training these people to protest so hardcore for. That's their end game and goal.
And so people like George Soros, he understands this.
Oh, yeah.
And this is a personal goal.
Oh, yep.
And here's all his money that he's made with capitalism that he's using for this end. Why? What would be the psychology there?
Well, the psychology there is essentially that communism never really leads to a utopia and everybody's equal kind of society. Look at Cuba. It leads to a situation in which there is an elite that rules and owns everything, and everybody else is a broke servant and a slave. And that's the true end and goal of communism. It's just a vehicle to foment a revolution. It's not really an end game for the people that are funding the movement. In fact, according to Yuri Bezmenov, a person that defected from the Soviet Union, Every single incidence of a communist revolution, once the revolution happens, they kill the leftists. Why do they do that? Because the leftists have been trained to be destabilizers. And after the revolution, they're going to realize that there is no utopia. They're going to realize that they were lied to. And who can become your most bitter enemy? Your former best friend. And so these people become bitter enemies of the new communist state. And so the communists realize, look, we just kill them off. They've been trained for 25 years to be destabilizers. We don't need destabilizers anymore. We need normalizers. Get rid of them. They're going to the gulag. They're going to the death camp, wherever. Remember, 60 million people, according to Alexander Solzhenitsyn, dead in Marxist Russia. 45 million in communist China under Mao Zedong. It's terrible. It's awful. And organizations inside of the United States like Julian Bond, he was one of the founders of the Southern Poverty Law Center. He traveled to meet with the Cuba to celebrate Fidel Castro winning in a Marxist revolution in Havana. His cohort, Stokely Carmichael, said that he was hoping that the Vietnam vets that were African American would come back and murder in the streets of America. He said that, you know, he was training gangs to riot in the streets of America, to turn the streets to chaos. Why do they want to do this? For a Marxist revolution, what Glenn Beck used to talk about, he used to talk about Cloward and Piven. What was their goal? Their goal was to build up America's national debt to the point where we go bankrupt. Why do they want to do that? Because then America implodes. We go bankrupt. Nobody has any money. There's chaos in the streets. They're trying to destroy society so that they have an excuse to bring in a new deal.
So they're using this presidency, labeling him a fascist, which doesn't even pass this laugh test, right? But labeling him a fascist so that they can build their membership.
Absolutely.
Because this really has a lot to do with money. Because they're not ever going to see, very doubtful they're going to see communism in their own lifetime, especially Soros, who's not a young guy, right?
Thankfully.
Yeah. And so it really has to be more about just power and money and manipulation and almost playing a game.
Yeah, no, I mean, these people really want to see a world communist government. I mean, the ones at the top want to see a world in which they get to be the world elite and then everybody else is I mean, these people believe, and the ones that don't know what they're doing, they're the useful idiots. And it's a real thing, and that's why it's so scary. And they're using these labels, like they want to attack the person through political correctness, and they want to call you xenophobic or racist or bigot in order to shut you down and to dehumanize you so that you're not worthy of response, even if your case makes sense, even if it's intellectual and you're correct. They want none of that. Why? Because you're not towing the Communist Party politically correct line. Therefore, you have to be shut down. They stated this explicitly.
And it works really well for them,
repressive tolerance.
It works really well for them, too, because I've noticed now that a lot of the police departments, they sit tight. They're not doing anything. Like at Berkeley, they're not doing anything.